Have you ever copied the exact same paint consistency someone showed you and somehow your painting still came out with completely different values? You mixed it the same, you used the same amount of water, and so what happened? Hi everyone, I'm MK, your Italian watercolor friend. Today is episode number 2 of my Own Your Values series. Today we're talking about reds and we will get into detail how this red produced different values, and I will tell you exactly what to expect because every color behaves in their own way. So let me get out my tonal values and Masstone scale. You need to understand that not every color can paint every value, and once you understand that, paint consistency starts making a whole lot more sense. For example, a creamy yellow isn't as dark as a creamy red, and a creamy red isn't as dark as a creamy blue, and a creamy blue isn't as dark as Payne's gray. So the consistency didn't change, but the pigment did, and that's exactly the reason why I came up with my tonal values and Masstone scale, because it really helps you understand where different colors live naturally. Once you know what the value is at their thickest consistency, you really know how to properly dilute your colors. And so today we're looking at our reds, and I don't know if you've ever noticed, but painting with reds, it's so much easier than painting with your yellows or painting with your blues. And the reason is red in general has a smaller value range because its Masstone starts around value 7 and it's already like in the mid-tone area. You basically have a short range of values to take care of. So you could never technically go too dark with your reds unless you use some darker pigment mixed with them. So the reds don't get as dark as the blues, and they don't start as light as the yellows. They sit somewhere in between, and that means there is simply less value scale to manage. Now let me show you the reds I keep in my palette, and I will tell you a little bit of my reds. If I were to choose only 3 reds, I would definitely choose Pyrrole Red, Quinacridone Magenta, and you could totally be fine with these two. But for the way that I paint, if I want a really bright accent, Quinacridone Scarlet is another pigment that I want in my palette. I don't use it as often, but I know that if I mix the Quinacridone Scarlet with the Quinacridone Magenta, I'm gonna be getting a very bright mix. And the pigments are, just so you know, PR209 for my Quinacridone Scarlet and PR122. I'll be showing you my reds. This is my Quinacridone Scarlet. It's a very fresh bubblegum looking red. The brand I'm using is Holbein, and Holbein's pigments are super bright. So it has that extra kick in person. And now, next to it, I want to place my Quinacridone Magenta. This is a very nice, cool red. It's almost like a violet. And so, like I said, if I mix these two, things get really bright. And then I have a more organic looking red, which is Pyrrole Red. This one. And this is like my primary red. I use this red in pretty much every red mix that I make when I want to ground things, when I want things to look more grounded. But not only that, I will be talking about my Quinacridone Red as well, because I do have it in my palette, so let's give it some importance as well. This one is my Quinacridone Red. It's a very nice medium red as well. This color is usually included in the split primary palettes from different kind of brands like Daniel Smith or whoever makes a split primary. This is usually the cool red. I have a lot of it, but recently I don't use it as much, because if I mix the Quinacridone Magenta with the Pyrrole Red, I'm gonna be ending up here. So I have it, but it's not what I reach for every day. And then I also have Pyrrole Rubin. This is a more intense red, and I do use this red when I want my reds to be deeper and I want to enrich them, but with still staying in the red range. Instead of going for a blue, I'll just go here. If I want to manage my value range, instead of mixing red and blue, I'll just choose red and Pyrrole Rubin, so I know that my value is not gonna go beyond value 8. Pyrrole Rubin is also like, it looks very much like alizarin crimson and those kind of more intense deep reds. What I want to do now, again, paper here, I'll be dividing it just like I did up here. For this exercise, I will be using Pyrrole Red because, like I said, this is like a medium red Probably the most common red. When I say watery, this is what I mean by it. On the internet, many people say watery mixes. When is it watery and when is it milky? So if you have this kind of water, like you can move it around, if you tilt your palette, the pigment also moves, that's watery. And it's a very thin mixture. If it's just a little bit mixed, the pigment mixed with water in the beginning, you will see like some parts of pigment particles and some parts of water. Here there is a halo of water. And this is what it looks like on your palette. It really moves freely, like if you want to tilt it more, you see, it goes away. So this is what I mean by watery. And I'm gonna be putting this swatch right here. I'm working wet on dry. So let's write here, wet on dry. And down here, wet on wet. If I want to achieve a milky consistency of this red, I will just simply get more and put it back into our bottle. The paint moves around, so if you tilt your palette, you will see the paint move, but the paint is more concentrated. So it has more body to it. And this is our milky consistency. Now, if you want to get to a creamy mix, you need to get more of that value. So you go in here and then you keep working your paint through, and this is more like, you see, does it move? Yeah, so that means the paint is still on with a good quantity of water, so this is still milky. But if you want to get it creamier, this should be it. That's creamy. So you see, this paint here, the water can separate the pigment more. This one is creamy, so it doesn't spread, it doesn't move as much, and it's very concentrated. So this is my creamy mix. Now if I want to get melted butter, I will get the paint from the pan, and I don't even bother to put it here. I'll just get it here and I'll put it here straight on it. And usually when you work with melted butter or butter, you get optimal results for your dry brushing. If you're someone who enjoys painting landscapes, melted butter and butter are the consistencies you use for that effect. And when I talk about butter, it's just like the paint straight out of the tube. So I'm not gonna get it from the part that's activated, but I will actually get it from the part that's just barely activated, even just activated by the wet brush that I'm using. So this is butter, see? I can't really draw straight lines with this. It really like lets the paper expose its texture, and here you get a lot of that. Okay, so I'll be putting this red back in here. And what do we learn from this simple exercise? Well, we said how to handle your red wet on dry. We said that our reds are sitting on value 7, right? So reds usually sit between value 8 and value 6. 6, I only put one red because it's more for like the brighter reds, like copper pink or this kind of luminous pinks, reds. And value 8 is more like when you're working with alizarin crimson or some kind of like quinacridone violet that has that red bias, warm bias. But typically reds are on value 7. And by the way, this is a product that I'm selling on Etsy. If you buy this scale, you will find the exact pigment numbers that I placed on these values. And I was saying, what did we learn from that? If you translate this one into a gray scale, you will see that these two colors don't get any darker. On its milky consistency, you get to value 6. On its watery consistency, you can get all the way down to value 1. In this case here, I diluted and it's about value 3 or value 2, just because I know that here I used a lot of water. So it was, let's say, 1 part of paint and 4 to 5 parts of water. That's how I kind of gauge my sense of value. Wait, let me zoom out a little bit. And yes, so see the water as a multiplier. And also one other thing that I want you to understand, many people think that the more water, the wetter the pigment will get because you get a thinner mix. But there's one mindset shift that I would like you to make, and that is to, instead of thinking as the water as a quantity for achieving that whiteness, ask yourself, how much of the paper do I want to still see? Because actually in watercolor, the white is already painted. If you think of it as like the water is the medium to reveal that whiteness, then things get different. Like, I feel like I started painting differently when I started asking myself that question. Anyways, now we're gonna move into our wet on wet study, and I'll be using just like this brush. This is a 24 flat brush. Here we go. So let's start with our watery mix again. So this one was watery, but it kind of dried off, so let's add more water. Like this. Now this is what we were working with before, so there's a 1-to-1 comparison, and now you can see it here. Now we're working with a milky consistency, and I'll be doing these swatches really fast, and then we'll talk about them. For our milk, again, we ask ourselves the question, is the paint moving? Is it concentrated? How much of the paint do I see on my palette? You tilt your palette, you see it moves. Okay, this is a milky consistency paint. We can place it on the paper. Now we move into the creamier paint, and this time again, we grab it from here. We place it somewhere where we did our milk, so we got just a bit of that water. And now, does this paint move as much as this one? No, that means it's getting creamier. Like, this is optimal. Doesn't move. This one does, but this one, you see, it stays. So this our milk, our creamy consistency. And this one, definitely one thing you can see from the get-go is that this one doesn't spread as much as our milky paint, leave alone our watery paint. And now we're working with melted butter. Melted butter, like we said, we get the paint from the pan, specifically the part that was wetted before. And this water here is kind of like drying, so we'll just activate it a little bit with just a touch of water, because we don't want this wetness to run into this part that we already painted on. So melted butter, we get it from here, and we go straight in. And now we're working with butter. Butter is the part of the pan where the paint has not been activated, so you only have water on your brush. That's all the water that you're using to get that paint. And sometimes when you work with butter, you can see some chunks of paint, and that's exactly when you know that's buttery paint. Okay, so we're gonna let this paint now settle. We're gonna let it dry, because once it dries, we can actually tell what happened. Honestly, I'll be waiting for it to dry, but I already know the result, because it's my main way that I paint, my main way of painting. So I know what's going to happen. When you're working wet on wet, you have, where is the water? The water, well, it's on your palette, it's in your paintbrush, and it's on the paper. This section here will dry lighter than this section. And so when you're working wet on wet, you always need to account for a little more paint if you want to achieve these results. In fact, here you can see now the paper is drying, but my watery mix is a little bit lighter on the wet on wet, and so is the milky consistency paint, and so on for the rest of the consistencies. Unless you're using a butter consistency paint, your reds are not gonna be on value 8, where we said they will be. The drying shift is more noticeable on wet. You have a lot less control, especially if you're starting off with this technique. But I think that once you get the hang of it, it's so much fun and freeing to paint wet on wet. And I think that's what the watercolor magic is all about. And as for the values, this value, before we were saying that this watering mix was like value 3, I believe that this one is not value 3, but in fact it's one value lighter. It's more like value 2. And when I worked with the milky consistency paint, I am now, let's say, between value 4 and 5. And you know what? You don't need to be super precise. Like, of course, sometimes your values will be a little bit off, but it's important that you have that connection between the values and the paint consistency. That's a game changer, and that's exactly how experienced artists work. They don't judge their values based on what they see, but they judge their paint, their values, based on what they know the value that the paint will become, if that makes any sense. And yeah, so to finish the value scale, here we are then Moving into our darker values, now we can actually see the paper is drying. This melted butter and this butter consistency paint are not near value 8 except for some parts. I would say they're more around value 6. You can actually see what I mean by working wet on wet and the control that you have. Basically, where the paint was more concentrated, the paint stayed together, it didn't spread, and the value stayed consistent. But where the paint spread, maybe there was a little more water on the paintbrush, on the paper, somewhere. So you can actually see like the main stroke that we drew, and you can see a gradient, like here is darker and here it goes lighter. And all around it, it softens up in a much lighter value. That's the main idea of this video. Also, I believe that once you understand these principles, watercolor opens its doors to you because it's so much more fun. You know what you're doing and you can just enjoy the process more. One last thing that I would like to say also is that I'm working with Holbein watercolors here because I know they allow me to have the maximum level of control. These paints don't really spread much on wet paper. They kind of stay where I put them, but if I were to work with paints like Memory Blue, I would get different results. Like the paint would spread much more and the values would be much lighter, which is not bad. It's more like I need to adjust my painting style to the paints that I'm using. So a few things: if I want to have more control and working wet on wet with Memory Blue, wet on dry nothing really changes because there's no water on the paper diluting the color. But with the Memory Blue, if I'm working wet on wet, for more control I'll be using thicker paints, less water on my brush. So every time I get like I rinse off my brush, I always make sure to go to my towel, or like if I have lots of water on my brush and I get the paint, and the paint usually sits on the tip of the brush depending how I get it, but I try to get the excess water out by dabbing the paintbrush. But I'm not gonna dab it like this way, placing the whole belly of the paint brush down, but I'll be just simply gently dabbing the back end of my bristles, and that's one way to control it. Another way to control it is downsizing your brush. I mean, you don't need to go I don't know why I got this one, but like get something smaller, like instead of using a number 10, use a number 6 brush, so your placement will be limited to that area and the spread will be less. And another thing you can do is, obviously, instead of wetting in a big area, get less portion of paper wet so that that paint doesn't go beyond the wetness of the paper. And so this is it for our red colors, and next time I'll be talking about yellows, and we'll see also how the yellows behave, and they're tricky. I will tell you why the next time. And so that's to say that to me, paint consistency only makes sense once you understand what each pigment is capable of. Don't really control your values by adding water, but I believe that you control your values once you understand the value range of this pigment that you're holding. Thank you so much for today. If you like this video, hit like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Ciao, ciao.